Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. Today we are talking about fall radishes and prepping the garden now for the heat next year. Even though it's hot now, it'll be even hotter next year maybe. So let's do it. All right, I hope you all are doing well. So today we're going to do the crop breakdown thing, and the crop that we're going to cover is the mighty fall radish. Now, I did a radish breakdown in the spring, as some of you will remember, and some of that info will be duplicated here, but I want to gear this a little more around the fall and winter production for radishes because it does take a slightly different approach than the spring. Anyway, a lot of people, when they first get into market gardening, are a little bit surprised by the ubiquity of radishes because, well, for the average American at least, they are not a staple of their diet or the diets of anyone around them. Why then are so many growers so obsessed with growing radishes? Well, the number one thing is that they are incredibly fast in production and their yields per square foot are comparatively, well, incomparable. In a square foot for even something as high profit as, let's say, lettuce mix, you are likely to only get like a quarter of a pound of lettuce in like 40 to 55 days. For radishes, however, you can often get a full pound or 3 large bunches in that same space, which is a big generalization because it depends heavily on what variety you're growing and your soil health and execution, but you get the idea. You get more. So it's maybe like $3 worth of lettuce, but as much as $9 worth of radishes at $3 a bunch for, 1/3 pound bunches, for instance. And you get that in like 30 days versus 55 days. So to the market gardener, if you can develop the market for loads of radishes, and they are out there, those markets, it's worth every penny. A now literally outdated phrase. Now, there are a few different types of radishes, so I'll discuss that a little bit in this segment, in segment 1. And then in segment 2, we can get into the nitty-gritty growing details and pest stuff and all that good stuff, or maybe bad stuff. So there are really 2 different kinds of radishes, long season and short season, or fresh radishes and storage radishes, respectively. The long season radishes are 50-day radishes that have, to be honest, some of the most amazing flavors out there. Sweet, spicy, complex. I love a good storage radish grown in the fall here, sown usually in like late July through August in Zone 6B where we are. Watermelon radishes are a great example of this and a great example of one of the radishes I love the most. Those pretty black radishes as well, and many of those like thick, colorful ones, the kind of the reds and the pinks, the long ones. Daikons too. Those are typically in the 50-day range and are considered sort of longer season. All of these quote-unquote longer season radishes make excellent pickles, and of course the daikon is a classic kimchi ingredient. One of my favorite things in the world is kimchi. Then you have the shorter day-length radishes like the red sora or the French breakfast. These are great in the spring and fall alike, but they are not really like your storage radishes. The longer season radishes can last a couple months in the cooler, whereas things like the very pretty French breakfast radishes really lose their loveliness after about 2, maybe 3 weeks tops. So if you're wanting a good crop to grow and then sell through the holiday season from, storage, then the longer season radishes are your huckleberry, or they're just radishes. So maybe there's a better famous movie line out there for those. Anyway, we will talk more about the storage and etc. in the next segment, like literally how to do it. I do want to add, though, that I also really like to grow radishes in cover crop mixes where I don't intend to grow like brassica next year. The fine root hairs on the daikon radish roots excel at decompacting the soil. So like if you're dealing with compacted soil, then daikon radishes could be a good choice for you. While at the same time it's decompacting, the radish itself holds nitrogen really well for the crops for next spring. In practice, you could sow them in a winter cover crop, harvest a few out for your like winter kimchi, and then let the rest of those radishes grow along with the cover crop and finish out. Cover crops are obviously beyond the scope of a fall radish day, but they are good in the winter killed mixes and winter hardy mixes alike. It just depends on your goals and how, like early you will need that space next year because they will take some time to decompose in the spring. For instance, I wouldn't probably grow them if I needed the beds in March here, like I do with like winter killed cover crops a lot of times. But if I didn't need the beds until like, say, May, it would be fine to include some daikons in there. So anyway, there is more than one way to use a fall radish, but let's pause there before getting into the growing stuff and take a quick break. And when we come back, we will sow them. BRB.
Good morning, everybody. Ryan with Harlow Farm here in eastern North Carolina, Zone 8B. This is one of our volunteer butternut vines. I don't think I can get all of it in the video. She's around 20 feet by 30 feet, and she volunteered out of a row of compost that we use to hill up potatoes.
Today's episode is brought to you by Holden Tool Company. Holden Tool Company is a family-run business specializing in high-quality hand tools and small batch manufacturing for growers of all kinds. They offer forged hoes, forks, scythes, sickles, pruning tools, orchard tools, and forestry tools featuring traditional European designs that are hard to find at ordinary garden centers. These tools are practical, durable, and made for people who typically do work by hand. Holden Tool Company provides thoughtful customer service, helping you choose the right tool for your body, crop, or task. Find them online at farmandgardentools.com and use the code NTG26 at checkout. That's farmandgardentools.com. All right, back to the show. All right, sowing radishes. The first and most important thing with any crop that is exclusively directly sown is that the soil needs to be as weed-free as humanly possible. Now, radishes are fast and they will outcompete almost anything, unlike, say, carrots, which are slow and seemingly beg to be overtaken. Radishes, even the slower varieties, will take 3 days tops to germinate. The slower storage varieties, of course, will take a little bit longer to grow, but even they will outcompete most weeds. That said, weeds can still become a problem even with something like radishes, so it's important to shore them up before sowing the radishes. That can mean a stale seed bedding, which is like getting the bed ready to sow, but not sowing, instead letting the weeds germinate, cultivate them out, or burn them out, as we will talk about tomorrow, and then sow the radishes. So that's one option. Another option is to occultate the space with a tarp, pull the tarp, broadcast some basic fertilizer like dried alfalfa meal or composted chicken manure or whatever, vermicast, whatever it is you're using for fertility, and then sow with the cedar. The cedar will drive the fertility into the soil, like literally you're just running over it and kind of burying that fertility. And because they are not particularly deep rooted, that should be sufficient for your radish production. Anyway, just get those weeds dealt with anytime you plan to sow. I mean, basically anything, but radish is still just as important. For sowing, I use the Jang cedar, but the earthway works fine, and you could do it with your hands if you're just doing a little bit. Match the seed plate or the roller to the seed size, though most radishes are roughly the same. Some radishes may differ in their size. So I can tell you what seed plate to use, but it may not be right for the seeds that you have. The radish plate for the earthway is pretty good. It works for most, but it does tend to lay them down quite thick. So if you use that seed plate and in that combo, give them a little bit more space between the rows, just so that they have a little bit of shoulder space. If using the Jang, I usually set my sprockets at 11 on 11, and sow each row like right up against each other for the fast radishes, or I space them about 4 inches apart for the bigger, i.e. storage radishes like watermelon. The tighter the spacing, the smaller the radishes themselves. So although you can grow like watermelon radishes, like you grow French breakfast, for instance, the radish itself will be fairly small and won't quite have that same sort of watermelon colored, tapering in the inside. Then after sowing them, I cover them immediately with insect netting and water them in really well, and so should you. There is no point in waiting to cover the brassicas because they will germinate so fast that if you wait a few days to cover and they've already germinated, the flea beetles might have already beat you to them. Plus, the insect netting will help you with more consistent germination by holding in some of that moisture, that humidity that they like. They like that for germination. They also like it pretty warm, so that helps. So yes, insect netting, if you've got it, as they grow, that netting will protect them from like 90% of what typically ails radishes. Plus, it will keep the greens looking pristine, thus photosynthesizing better. And I don't usually take the netting off until it's time to harvest. You can if it starts to get cold. Most stuff is not going to get to them beyond maybe like deer or something, but most small pests are not going to pester them. And the reason that you can leave them on all that time is they don't need pollination. So there's no real point in removing it unless you absolutely have to. I only take it off to like cultivate and harvest. Then it goes right back on any sort of insect netting that I'm using. That doesn't mean I have significant pest pressure either. It's just insurance, and frankly, a few bites out of even a single leaf makes that leaf significantly less marketable. So it just makes sense to cover them. Once harvest comes, for the fast crops, I harvest and bunch them in the field quickly and put them into a bin with some shade while they await their pass through the wash station. Fresh radishes are one of the things that I'll harvest like almost immediately after, say, lettuce, because the greens are just pretty sensitive to the heat. To that point, I don't just have to go get them out early for the green's sake, but I have to be quite gentle as well so as not to bruise them. My foot-pedaled sprayer that I use for all of our roots is a little too intense for the greens themselves. It's fine on the radishes, but the greens, it's a little bit much and will damage them. So I will either, dip the greens in water and wash them gently by hand or with a hand sprayer, or cup my hands over top of the greens as I spray them just to protect them from getting too damaged in that heavy spray. Yeah, just don't spray the leaves dead on with a hard sprayer. That's basically all I'm saying. As for the storage ones, I will sell some of the storage radishes fresh with the greens on because they look awesome that way. But for the bulk of the storage radishes, I will top them, remove the greens entirely, wash them, dry them, and then place them in a closed bin or perforated bags inside of like refrigeration temperatures. As long as they are not wet, the radishes, that should get you at least a couple good months in storage, checking every once in a while for rot. But again, similar to carrots, the greens do have to come off for them to store very well. With the greens on, you get about 2 weeks tops, no pun intended. If they have soil still on them, that can cause other problems. So in my opinion, top them, clean them, dry them, bin them. Anyway, that's the gist on radishes. Let me know what questions you all have or what I missed. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, what to do this hot year for the hot year next year. Be right back here.
Hey nerds, Nick here at Riggin Farm in North Georgia, Zone 7B. I want to share with you our sweet potato patch as well as our butternut squash trellis. We have 3 50-foot beds full of sweet potatoes. We're also working on our butternut squash arch trellis with several fruit sizing up quite nicely. And of course, the bees absolutely love the flowers. Some of our vines are already stretching well over 8 feet.
Want to harvest seeds adapted to your farm, but you're thinking, look, I have a market farm to run. I'm way too busy weeding and picking tomatoes. I'm Dan Brisebois, and I'm here to tell you that you can grow seed on your farm without losing your mind. On the Seed Farmer podcast, and in my book, The Seed Farmer, I share exactly how busy growers make seed crops work alongside a bustling farm business. Find The Seed Farmer wherever you get your books and podcasts. Go grow some seeds.
Hey, if you have a question that you'd like me to address here on the show, you can do that. Sign up for one of our Patreon tiers. Go to the latest show thread and put that question in there. I actually just put up our August show thread today, only like 3 days late. Just because of time, I cannot get to all the questions on all the platforms that we get. So Patreon.com/no-till-growers is the best way to get them to me and to get them answered here on the show. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Fred Makes Stuff, who writes, quote, possible topic, slogging through unusually high temperatures this week and hearing in the news that the super El Nino year of 26-27 will probably be even hotter has me wondering what, if anything, I can do to prepare for the heat and erratic rain next year. It's so hot and dry that plants are just giving up the ghost. We had a longer term idea to plant shade breaks of fruit trees, but those will take a number of years to be big enough to help, end quote. All right, Fred, good topic here, and love the phrase giving up the ghost. That's a fun one. So I often say on this show that all of our work is about this particular question of water management in some respect, right? Like when we're talking about not tilling the soil, we're talking about aggregate stability and building organic matter and ultimately protecting the soil's ability to hold water, keep it covered, keep it planted, keep it undisturbed as much as possible, yada, 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 and so on. However, heat is a slightly different monster because the best soil practices in the world will not protect young plants from 110 degree heat index very well, 43 degrees Celsius. Mulch will help, absolutely, in the soil, but the plants themselves require a reasonable air temperature to adequately photosynthesize. In many cases, if the air temperature gets too high, the crucial rubisco enzyme in C3 plants, most of the plants that we grow are C3 plants, will actually start fixing oxygen instead of fixing carbon, which is not great. We're carbon-based life forms, so are plants. We kind of need that. So basically, the plant will stop growing and feeding the soil and ultimately slow down or even die. With that in mind, a lot of what it comes down to is planting the right varieties at the right time. So don't expect, obviously, like winter hardy lettuces to do well in the summer. Therefore, looking for heat varieties in the seed catalogs will help. Another thing that will help next year is temporary shade options like shade cloth or burlap while your trees continue to grow and become that natural shade cloth. That's nice because you can just employ it as needed. It doesn't really have to be weighted down. Like shade cloth is pretty heavy, doesn't blow around quite as much. Especially for young plants getting established, that can help a lot just to have those things around. Also, strategic interplantings like sunflowers or corn or even tomatoes above more sensitive crops, that can be utilized effectively to keep stuff cool. Then naturally, there is using water to cool things down, though I wanted to leave that for last because I assume many listeners will not have the abundance of water that we do here in Kentucky just to use in sprinklers occasionally, give the plants their own little bespoke splash pad. But that's an option as well. A little sprinkling in the summer on certain crops can go a long way just to cooling them down, keeping them happy. Just obviously don't overdo it. Don't do it all the time with moisture because it can create disease issues. And if you have water that is high in salts, that may also lead to issues on the leaves as well. Otherwise, it's all about just taking care of your soil, maximizing the plant and mulch coverage where possible, and being smart about what plants you're growing and when you are planting them, all the way until the end of the season. The soil management you are doing now will be a boon to your production next year. So just keep that in mind if you're ever thinking you want to cut some corners. It does matter what you're doing this year to help you with next year. Anyway, let me know what all I missed. And with that, we are done here for the day. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, meaning that if you like this work, you can donate a little money and the government will give you a little tax break and we will get to keep going. It's genius. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of August, look at us, you get a shout out on the show, but no signups yet for August, which is all good. That'll have to change if we want some stories, and we want some stories. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching and or listening. Bye.